Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I go over the week's events in the world of Scientology as reported on Tony's Substack and elsewhere you'll see this week as well. So, Tony, welcome to the show.
Happy birthday, Chris!
Thank you. Today is my birthday, folks. Thanks, Tony. So if you want to share some birthday love, I am all about that. Enjoying the hell out of my vacation, by the way. But this show is carrying on through December as we went over. And we have some things to go over this week. There were some interesting stories. So, Tony, first off, let's talk about Leah and Mike even did a whole podcast on this. We saw, that Kendrick Moxon try to set this whole thing up. But this Scientology is outrageously, in classic psychopathic fashion, turning the entire thing around on Leah. And she's the one with blood on her hands. What was this whole thing about?
Well, we've been talking about this case for 4 years now. It was during the last season of Leah and Mike's show, Scientology in the Aftermath, their third season. There was this security guard, Scientology security guard at the Advanced Org in Australia, who was killed by a 16-year-old with a knife.
Right.
And Scientology just immediately began claiming that this was a result of Leah's show, that they have had more threats now because of Leah's show, to the point that this 16-year-old boy actually killed a security guard because he'd been watching Leah. And the tough thing for us over here was not only that it was, on the other side of the world, but that Australia is a little more protective of court details than, here in the United States. So we were getting very little detail about what happened. Also, because the boy was 16, they were really keeping detail under wraps. Well, now that Leah is suing the Church of Scientology, and Chris, we've been talking about the back and forth in that lawsuit since August. There's been some really, really interesting filings on both sides fighting over this issue of whether, Scientology is harming her ability to make a living. They're claiming they're just giving her back what she's giving them, and back and forth.
Right.
Well, Leah just recently responded to Scientology with this 700-page filing. I'm still going through and digging stuff out. But one thing that was really interesting to me was they had actually submitted court documents from Australia in that case. I've never seen these before. I don't think they've been public before. They might have been in Australia, but I don't remember any reporters over there reporting on it. But this was the judge. There were a couple judges who wrote about this situation and finally spelled out the details of what happened that day in January 2019. And it's awful. Basically, this Taiwanese mother and son had moved from Taiwan to Australia. She's a Scientologist. She was trying to get her son into it. He really wasn't into it. And at some point, another person there at the org told the mother that there was something on the boy's MP3 player that was pornographic or something. I'm going to guess it was some manga, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Taiwanese boy, 16 years old, apparently has some sort of, they called it a novel on MP3. I'm going to guess it's some sort of a manga with some adult themes.
Right.
And they warned the mother about that. And so one morning at 4:00 in the morning, she got up, took the device away from him while he was sleeping, and removed whatever that material was.
Mm.
So when he went to the Advanced Org that day, he was really angry at his mother that she had taken that material off, but also there was some staffer there at the org that had told him he knew how to restore the files. So that's why he had gone to the org that day. He was looking for that staffer. He was really angry, and he wanted this whatever materials restored to his device. And so when he was stopped by some security guards, it was just a spur-of-the-moment, passionate thing. He whipped out a knife, went to attack one guy, and in doing so, slashed the throat of another guy. That's the way it was described on what came across on CCTV. Was the second guy just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The knife went across his throat, opened his throat up, and he died. So they were able to arrest the kid. And the judges had some psychiatrists examine the boy. They determined he's schizophrenic. He'd already been diagnosed schizophrenic and autistic. And they
Oh.
just said there's no way they're going to be able to try this kid.
Right.
And so the judges determined he was guilty. He had killed that security guard, but they were not going to try him. And as far as I know, he's been institutionalized.
Right.
And that's okay. But guess what? You get to the end of this lengthy, recitation by the judge. What is never mentioned, right? Leah Remini or Scientology in the aftermath.
Right.
It had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Right.
And see, Scientology knew exactly what had happened. They're the ones that had the closed circuit television footage. So Scientology lied from the very beginning, claiming that this kid, for some reason, had been watching Leah's show and decided to attack somebody at Scientology. Absolutely not true. And so I was glad to finally get these details about what had happened. And I just put up most of that document as is. I trust my readers to, read that. They don't need my interpretation. And it was just, I think it was a really powerful document. I know Mike was really glad that I did that, and he amplified it at his website. Yeah. And then, like you said, Mike and Leah talked about it on their own podcast. So, it's an important thing. They've been hammering Leah with this for 4 years now, and it's a complete lie.
Right. And as we went over last week, we also have Kendrick Moxon's hand caught, right, red-handed, trying to get another person to do that exact same thing. They are desperate to find somebody they can connect those dots with to make good their argument that Leah is some hate monger who is inciting violence against Scientology, which is not true and has never been true. None of us.
And let me just point out, there are some people who go to Scientology facilities and yell and scream at Scientologists. Please don't do that.
Right, exactly.
Because Scientology then uses that against people trying to bring out legitimate criticism of the Church of Scientology. If you are standing outside of a Scientology facility and you are screaming at Sea Org members or other Scientologists doing their job, you're not helping. Don't do that.
Exactly. And we hope you can connect the dots here as to why, because it actually gets right in the way of these legal cases. And Leah's lawsuit is the big, kind of thing right now. And this is a big deal. And she's going for the throat. She is going for, let's get rid of the fair gaming. And so if you're out there, fair gaming Scientology, you're doing bullshit like that, I've said from day one, it ain't helpful. Tony, thank you for that, because I could not agree more. We need to, if anything, show that we are not that thing, that we are not what Scientology is claiming we are, and we're not. So stop doing that crap. At least that's my advice as well. Okay, so quite a story there. And also, thank you for all those clarifications, because we did not have all those details before about any of that stuff with the kid. And
thank you to Leah and her legal team.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right.
I don't know the backstory. I don't know how they were able to get those documents, how difficult that was, whether somebody in Australia had to do something to get those documents out. I'm just grateful that they're there so we get some real detail on what happened that day. It's tragic. It's terrible. Of course, people are asking really good questions about, this 16-year-old boy had stopped taking his medicine in Taiwan before he went to Australia. Was that under the influence of Scientology? We don't know.
Right.
Mike raised another great question. The judge in the case said that he was describing what happened on closed circuit TV based on what he was told about it. Mike was wondering if maybe Scientology just didn't allow them to see it. I wonder if Australian law enforcement saw it and described it to the judge. I don't know. But either way, there's definitely still some questions about this whole thing. But they're more about Scientology's culpability. They're not about Leah Remini.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not, and by the way, for anybody who's not familiar, I have personal experience with this. The church is really adamantly against psychotropics. Period. End of story. Even for non-psychotropic uses, if you have Ritalin or some other drug you're taking for some other non-psychotropic reason, they don't care. If it's ever used for any reason, for any psych thing, it's no, absolutely not. And if you're on it, you need to get off of it. And if your son's on it, he needs to get off of it. I'm ashamed to say, in my ignorance back in the day, I pushed that kind of thing. So I know that the Scientology does that. So it's not, we can't say for sure they did it here, but the habit, the pattern of behavior with Scientology is to do that. So,
right.
Yeah. So they're, and again, just to put a seal on this, I am not, and I don't think anybody in this community is happy that there was a fatality involved in this of a Scientologist. That is a tragedy of the highest order, you know? Okay. Moving on here. Now we have confirmation this week about Miscavige in LA for New Year's.
Right. So I had posted a flyer or an email showing that Scientologists were being invited to come to Los Angeles for the weekend of December 16th, this coming weekend, in order, and they were kind of shy about it. They just want you to come down there, spend the holidays with them, and maybe tour some sites. And of course, I wondered, were they, resurrecting the LA New Year's event the way they resurrected the IAS in England?
Right.
Well, then after that flyer, I heard from a source who was invited to the December 16th taping at the Shrine Auditorium. So that was an indication that, yes, they are trying to revive that tradition after the pandemic. Now we actually have a flyer. That not only says New Year's event, December 16th at the Shrine Auditorium, but actually includes an image of David Miscavige on stage at the Shrine. So that tells us that not only are they definitely bringing back the New Year's tradition, but that Dave will be there. And that's something, because if you remember, Chris, when we heard that they were going to start up again at the IS in East Grinstead, we were told, Mike Rinder was saying that that's a very secure place. You can fly into a private airport and get to St. Hill without being seen.
Yep.
But he told me the Shrine, at that time, the Shrine's different. The Shrine is not as secure. Mm-hmm. But I guess they feel that they did so well at the IAS in St. Hill that now they're going to go ahead and revive the New Year's event. And again, for those folks that aren't in Scientology, what they do is on this year, it'll be Saturday, December 16th, somewhere around the middle of the month. They have a big event at the Shrine Auditorium and pretend it's New Year's Eve. So everybody's like 10, 9, 8. They have the big, countdown and Happy New Year. Then 2 weeks later, on the actual night of New Year's Eve, they show that video in all the orgs around the world, right, so that Scientologists everywhere can be part of the New Year's celebration. So that's what's going on. They're going to tape that Saturday night, December 16th. And, people have pointed out that it's a little bit of a risk, not just because David Miscavige is coming to LA, where he's been named in multiple lawsuits, but also, and that they're trying to find him to serve him. But also, the Shrine is huge. It's not like Ruth Eckerd Hall. It's not like that tent in East Grinstead. The Shrine legitimately holds 6,000 or 7,000 people. What is he going to do to fill that out? And so we're kind of curious about whether he can, and whether they'll have to have seat fillers or what. But whatever, it's happening this weekend. And, I'm sure, once again, the Scientologists themselves will consider it a huge victory. Scientology's back, baby. We got the IAS going, and now we got LA. Did you ever go to a New Year's event yourself, Chris, when you were in?
Oh, every year, because I, and especially with the Shrine, I'm intimately familiar with the Shrine because I was the usher in charge. So getting people's butts in seats was my job, on time for the event, right? And it was like right from the lobby, pushing them in, the whole deal. It's a very organized activity, and like I think we mentioned before on the security thing, having been backstage, having seen how it works, I know that it is definitely more of a security risk for him there than it is in the UK. No question about it. He could fly in or he could helicopter in or whatever. But the control of the bodies backstage and the green room and the path to the green room and all that is not that hard. And he's got private security as well as Sea Org security, and he's surrounded by allies there. So so I think they'll manage to keep any process servers away who try to get in there. It's, I mean, I say this, I don't want to discourage any of you process servers out there. Okay, go for it, but know that it's not going to be just walking up to him. Nobody's going to let you do that. So you're going to have to be clever.
Yeah.
Okay, now the other thing, kind of wrapping up, was the guns. Danny Masterson's guns accounted for, and apparently, like, where did they end up? How did this work out?
So it turned out, if you remember before, we learned that Danny had 23 registered guns, and he was supposed to turn them in when he was arraigned 3 years ago in 2020. And when he was convicted and sentenced this summer, they gave him apparently a document saying, okay, make sure your weapons are turned in. But then it turned out there was a report from the probation department saying that there were 10 of those guns that were unaccounted for. One of them had been destroyed, so there were still 9 that were listed that we saw a list of. And they were like semi-automatic rifles. I mean, one was a Hungarian AK-47. I mean, these were some serious firepower, right?
Yeah.
And we can understand that the Jane Does were really concerned about that. So Judge Olmedo gave them to this last week to account for them. One of his attorneys came into court and said, okay, they were in Oregon. And they were apparently they had proof that they had been turned over to a firearms dealer for safekeeping.
Okay.
But we had a couple people that went to the courthouse that we knew were going and were going to give us some notes on that. And they pointed out to us that Deputy DA Reinhold Mueller indicated that he was preparing some search warrants to be served because apparently he wasn't quite satisfied. I think they were waiting for some final confirmation, but that he had some search warrants prepared to check out some of this. So apparently there was still a question, even at the end of that hearing. But the only other detail I got that was kind of interesting was that Danny had signed over power of attorney to his brother Jordan. Jordan Masterson now apparently has the power over those firearms. And again, there was a document saying that they had been turned into this dealer.
Okay.
So hopefully that's the end of this. And, but I can understand why people were concerned about why 3 years later wasn't this all, accounted for. But,
right.
Danny's got no use for him where he is now. That's for sure.
Well, that's
and then
the
other thing is now he is going to be moving from Men's Central Jail in Los Angeles to state prison. I haven't heard which facility yet. But I'm looking forward to hearing that exactly which place he's going.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also curious, do we have any access to the information as to where in county or state he will be in terms of the celebrity VIP and his what he's guilty of tends to, sometimes put people in isolation?
Right. I haven't heard anything yet. I'm sure I'll be like the 5th person to say anything about it. There's other people that are watching that closer than I am. But he's going to be moved somewhere. And, I don't know if that's Chino or if it's somewhere in Northern California, whatever. We'll find out at some point.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so that's the latest on Masterson. And then, high-powered weapons, like kind of fits. I mean, just to stereotype him totally on that. Phil Jones now. There was a whole write-up from him this week regarding has it been 10 years now?
So now he wrote me a piece I thought was really moving. It's now been 10 years that he and his wife, Willie, have been separated from their 2 children who disconnected from them on instructions from the Church of Scientology. And his kids are in some interesting positions. Emily is at Galaxy Press, and she's married to the president of Galaxy Press, John Goodwin. And so we see her a lot because John and Emily go to these conventions and things like San Diego Comic-Con, where they set up a booth for L. Ron Hubbard's books. And so we often see pictures of Emily in social media, and that's got to be hard for Phil and Willie. They can never see her, but they see her on social media. And then, but maybe even harder though is that they never hear anything about Mike. And Mike Jones had been posted. I'm sorry, at Celebrity Center.
Yeah.
The last they knew.
Yeah.
And so, it's just one of these things where Phil and Willie left Scientology, and their children were told, cut them out of your lives, and they did. It's just such a horrible, one of the worst things Scientology does. And we all know Phil and Willie so well. They've been very vocal about things. They had the billboard several years ago.
That's right.
And so what a grim anniversary for them.
Oh, totally. Totally. Slightly personal for me as well, because I was involved with Phil and Willie early on, coming out of Scientology. A lot of people don't know there was a whole other series produced around the same time as Scientology in the Aftermath that never aired. And an intervention type thing was trying to be staged that we worked on with Phil and Willie, trying to see their kids. And this was, like 8-9 years ago. So, man, this is all, you could say, the collateral damage of Scientology. It's just, they just leave lives ruined behind them, and whatever, doesn't matter. And it does matter. It matters a lot. There's a heavy emotional as well as the financial and psychological toll that these cults take on people. And Scientology is one of the worst when it comes to this. So Phil's write-up was quite good. Okay, and then finally, for kind of the big one this week, as though all of these aren't big, was Valerie Haney, and a big update on her whole thing, which also went to the Daily Beast. What was this all about?
Yeah, back in October, if you remember with Valerie's case, she sued Scientology in 2019, alleging that she had been held against her will while she was in the Sea Org. And then after she came out of the Sea Org and went to work for Leah Remini, she was stalked and harassed and libeled. And so she filed a lawsuit on that. But a judge ruled that he granted Scientology's motion to force her case into religious arbitration. She fought that ruling for several years. She went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And finally, it was obvious that she had, if she wanted to do anything with her lawsuit, she has to go through the arbitration.
Right.
Well, if the only other time there's been a court-ordered arbitration in Scientology's 70-year history were Luis and Rocio Garcia, who went through it back in 2017. Yep. And their arbitration was one afternoon. And Luis afterwards said what a joke it was, and it was ridiculous. I was stunned when Valerie told me that hers was scheduled for 3 days in the City of Commerce. And so I decided I wanted to go out there and talk to her. I knew I wouldn't be able to go in with her, but maybe each day afterwards we could talk. Mm-hmm. And she said, sure, come on out. So I flew out to LA, and they were, it's so weird. I'm sure you have too. We've been seeing these images of this distribution center they've got in the City of Commerce. City of Commerce is this industrial spot about halfway between Orange County and LA, downtown LA. And it's just sort of this, kind of a grim place with just industrial stuff. And Scientology has this huge warehouse where they print up all their stuff they send to everybody all the time. Yep. And for some reason, they wanted her to go there. Weird, that
is weird. That's a weird place to go.
I didn't know much about that place, except I remembered in the back of my mind, Commerce. There's a giant casino there. For some reason, yes. There's this casino right on the freeway.
Yes.
And it turns out it's like less than a mile from where they were having these things. So I thought, from my days when I used to go to Vegas many, many years ago, well, casinos sometimes have cheap rooms. Mm. And sure enough, the Commerce Casino had decent rates. And so I went ahead and booked a room. And I was just hoping that, maybe we could meet somewhere after each day and she could tell me what was going on. Well, it turns out then that her attorneys they would let them in, but they wouldn't let her go into the room where she was. But they had hired a court reporter and a videographer. And each day they wanted to video record her giving a sworn statement.
Mm-hmm.
And now I was a little concerned because I thought maybe they were going to drag her far away someplace to set up a studio or something.
Right.
And I thought my plan was falling apart. But then it was so crazy that first day I checked into my room. I was waiting to hear something. Valerie had come out of the arbitration and said, "Hey, they want to record something. Can we come to your room?"
Yeah. Perfect.
And so, I had this video guy and the court reporter guy and the two attorneys, and they're set up in my hotel room. And I got to just sit there and watch Valerie describe what she was going through. So I knew this was a really unique situation for me. It was a very unusual situation. I mean, when you're a reporter, you hope something like this is going to happen. And so I thought, this is the kind of thing that I thought the Daily Beast would be interested in, and they were. It took us a little while because, got to clear things legally and all that stuff. But finally, this weekend it came out. And, I want to thank the Daily Beast. They really let me go at length. It's a long description of everything that they were talking about and the background of what Valerie went through. And really the outrageous thing about it, Chris, was, like I said, the Garcias got done in an afternoon. What were they doing for 3 days in Valerie's? Well, they were doing everything except handling her claims.
Right.
They were just going over all this nonsense about her Sea Org contracts and the exit agreement. I mean, the judge already ruled that she has to go through this arbitration. Why are they trying to prove that all over again? And it dawned on me, they're just trying to string this out as long as possible because they know once they're done, then Valerie's going to file an appeal and get it back into court. So I think Scientology is just trying to make her give up by just wasting her time because it was so frustrating having her to tell me about, I mean, they were going through contracts she had signed for 1 billion years when she was 15 years old. What's that got to do with her claims that she was being harassed just a couple of years ago and intimidated and followed? Nothing. They're just avoiding the actual arbitration and they're just wasting her time. It's absolutely outrageous.
Absolutely so. And they're given such wide latitude, unfortunately, by the courts in how to go about executing this arbitration, as we say. It's so not that. This is just a kangaroo court. Let's be clear.
And then, So after the end of 3 days, they hadn't even got to her claims yet.
Right.
I said, "What are they going to do?" She said, "They want me back in January." And so her attorneys went into court and tried to explain to the judge, "This is outrageous." And the judge just said, "No, you can have a continuation. Go ahead. I'll see you in June."
Yeah. In June. Jesus. Yeah. So clearly, this is where the abuse of the system happens. This is how it happens, right? This is supposed to be something that's supposed to free up our courts. That's supposed to make things easier for judges. But when judges are lazy, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to use that word here because I don't know what other word to use. I'm not going to go malicious. So I'll just say he's lazy. It's just
a woman.
Oh, her, sorry. And it's just off the rails because courts do have discretion in this matter. They can say something. And the fact that she's not indicates to me that she is either so ignorant of Scientology that she doesn't get that this is a kangaroo court, or it could be something worse. And we know Scientology plays dirty. So when I say something worse, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, just one example is that when Valerie's, her story's famous because she escaped from Scientology in the trunk of a car.
Right.
But then Scientology was working on her dad and saying, "Listen, she needs to come back. She needs to route out properly, all that garbage." And one of the, there was a woman named Chris Catano that was the one that was really pressuring her family. She's got to come back. And so finally her dad, convinced her, and Valerie went crawling back and then spent 3 months under intense handling around the clock. And then when she gets to this arbitration now, that Kristen Catano is one of the people that's an arbitrator. One of the people that was in her, Valerie herself considers her part of the abuse.
Right. That's right.
And she's now on this arbitrating panel. I mean, it's just outrageous.
Absolutely so. You just couldn't. Short of throwing her into the hole, you can't really imagine a much worse scenario here. I mean, it's kind of that stupid and that bad and that outrageous. And and if you're listening to this right now and you're outraged, good, because that's the correct response to this. It is outrageous. I hate watching abuses of our legal system this way. I really do. It's such an abuse, and Scientology is just getting away with it here. So hopefully on appeal, or when the information comes back, the judge will start seeing sense. But in the meantime,
that's what's kind of scary, because in Luis's case, the judge in his case accepted the result from the Kangaroo court.
Yep.
And so Luis and his wife appealed that to a higher court, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, federal level, and they rubber stamped it. So I know that Valerie's looking forward to appealing, and maybe the 9th Circuit in California will look at it in a different way, but it's not guaranteed. I mean, these courts they're so adamant that a contract is a contract, even if it's somebody giving up all their rights and they didn't even know they were doing it.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Exactly. That is the linchpin on this. And the very idea of contract law being dragged into a religious sphere is itself so insane. And yet here we are. Here we are. And this is why I will continue to pound the desk on coercive control in the courts. These judges do not get it. They don't get it. No. We have to get them to get it, and that's going to take education. That's going to take public pressure. So it's not just government officials who should be receiving information or messaging or demands from us. It is also our legal system, because there is education out there about coercive control. There are people doing this work, but there's too few, and there's too many judges, and there's a lot of hills to climb on this. So if you're watching and you want to help with this, that's a direction you could really help in for all the future lawsuits, not just Valerie's. Okay, so that's what we got this week. Tony, as always, the events this week, it's next Saturday. This New Year's thing for Scientology.
The New Year's event is this Saturday. Yeah. And there's some stuff in court happening this week, so it's going to be a fun week.
Cool. All right, folks. And as I said, I'll be on vacation still, so don't watch for any other particular videos from me here on the channel. However, I did do a live stream yesterday. You might see me pop in here and there, so you can watch for that. Otherwise, happy holidays. Hope everybody's hanging in there. And as we proceed to the 2024. And what I think, I can't wait to hit the ground running. I've got so many things already planned. Good. So, all right, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.